causing some changes to our world climate. So global warming is not a good term. If you remember the idea of the first law of thermodynamics, that energy can't be created or destroyed. It can change form, you can even move it. So what's happening Earth-wise is our temperature levels are shifting. If you can only have so much energy in the universe and so much energy on the Earth, if it gets hotter someplace, what's going to happen someplace else? It's going to get colder. And so we're not only seeing maybe rising temperatures, but snowfalls are happening earlier now. I don't know if you check the weather. You know, my wife kids me about my favorite channels, the Weather Channel. Well, I watch it every morning because they have news, they have the weather, they even have the stock reports, which I don't even like to look at. My whole retirement portfolio is based on stock. I don't like to see it just, it's like opening your wallet and just throwing money out like this, you know, it's like the same feeling. So. All right, so what we are seeing is global ice bodies. The poles and the glaciers are melting at a fairly high rate. We're seeing the polar ice caps shrinking, and we're seeing glaciers recede rapidly. It doesn't take much temperature change to affect that kind of changes in the ice caps and so forth. When we talk about the temperature change, we might talk about a fraction of a degree in a multi-year time. But that's enough of a change to change, for instance, where growing belts are agriculturally. And we may see certain places where corn and crops of that sort, the range is shifting higher. And what's that do to the people down in the southern range of those crops? They might be out of business. When you have temperature variations and so forth, it does change the rain and snowfall pattern. These have effects on organisms, which in turn tend to affect human health. And of course, if it affects agriculture, we got this 7 billion people we're trying to feed, and projections are by the end of this century, which I will not worry much about, there might be approaching or in excess of 10 billion people on Earth. And we've seen those things like water, like fuel. Those things are going to be, they have a finite amount and a finite quality, and the more people are using those things, the more problems there's going to be on all kinds of levels. So what we're dealing with is a global change in the overall climate. Now, you got to look at the temperature scale. Graphs can be deceiving. But this is the annual global temperature in Celsius. Now, Celsius degree is about twice as big as a Fahrenheit degree, 1.8 actually. So that's not all that cold when you look at our temperature scale, so to speak. Most of the world is on the Celsius or the centigrade scale. So we only go from 13.8 to 14.6 degrees. So that kind of tells you we're only varying, what, 0.8 of a degree there from one extreme to the other. But 0.8 of a degree to a global weather or global temperature average can really be an impact on the environment as far as plants in particular. But we see it's not very steady. It's up and down from one year to the next. But if you could draw an average through there, it would be on the incline. And we're seeing from 1960 to the present, roughly a degree Celsius. That's almost 2 degrees Fahrenheit in average global temperature. And so people, you know, politics argue that there's no such thing, but NASA's data is NASA's data. So one of the great causes, according to popular opinion, is the presence of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. this is where the rub comes. Because on the one side of the spectrum, people blame human activity for all of it. The climate is changing because of human activity. And I don't necessarily fully agree with that. We might urge it along a little bit, but I believe in my heart that climates come and go on the earth. And we've just been here such a short time, we've only seen a little piece of it. I think there's cycles. I think it's shown in the ice core studies that they've done, that temperature and the presence of such gases as carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, all these fluorocarbons, you've heard these things in the news probably, but it seems like carbon dioxide gets the biggest rap. And of course, carbon dioxide is a byproduct of what kind of... Okay, anytime you combine oxygen with a carbon-based material, it's a form of combustion. And that always releases carbon dioxide. Whether you're burning a campfire, whether you're driving your car, or whether you're exhaling, or whether a volcano's blowing up, or whether there's manure processing in the field, that all releases carbon dioxide. We do have increased levels of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere compared to years past, or decades past. The source of that, I don't know. The experts say that when Mount St. Helens exploded in 1980, there was more carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases spewed into the atmosphere than all the automobiles and biological activity in the world that was going on during that time. So, but the fact is, carbon dioxide and some of these others are greenhouse gases. We're going to just mention those. This is something we've looked at before, but notice how in a given year the carbon dioxide levels have a high and a low. Why? When is it highest? When is carbon dioxide here in Lexington the highest? What time of year? Winter. Because there's not much photosynthesis going on. Remember, photosynthesis takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, replaces it with oxygen. So during the winter season, we have high levels of carbon dioxide, and if we were to plot this against the oxygen concentration, when the CO2 is up, the oxygen is going to be down. Now, we're not talking about great amounts. We're talking about parts per million here. From here to here is 8 parts per million. In other words, for every million particles or molecules in the atmosphere, 8 of them are carbon dioxide from one end of the spectrum to the other. That's what they're saying. So but you see this nice cycle. When we looked at the video on microscopic life and how it grew in the jar, I don't know if you remember that one, or did we see that? Yeah. Sometimes I show it and sometimes I don't. It talked about this cycle. But if you were to average this, you see the trend. The amount of carbon dioxide from back in the 50s to up in the present time is going up in parts per million. Therefore, the greenhouse effect is increasing. The cause of this, I don't know. I can't believe in my heart that human activity accounts for all of it. We might age it up a little bit. So what happens with this greenhouse effect? How many have ever been in a commercial greenhouse? Have you ever been in one? How about in the middle of the winter? Now, it's not necessarily in the middle of the winter, but it is warmer. If you get in your car on a nice sunny day in the wintertime, you can feel where it's heated your car. Well, this is the greenhouse effect. And when we talk about this effect, when light energy passes through a fluid, for instance, it can be water, it can be the atmosphere. When you pass from empty space to a fluid, what's that do to the speed of, slows it down, doesn't it? And when it slows down,